We're incredibly grateful for your support. Before we begin today's tale, tell us, which city or country are you joining us from? We love connecting with our global audience. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Long Road Home. Vance Mercer gripped the steering wheel tighter as his truck pushed through the worsening blizzard. The weatherman had called it the worst storm in 30 years, but nothing was going to stop him from getting home tonight. Not when it was Diana's birthday. Snowflakes danced in his headlights, hypnotic and disorienting. 9 hours on the road already, with visibility dropping by the minute. Any sane person would have pulled over at a motel hours ago. But Vance wasn't known for giving up. It was what had made him one of the most sought-after residential architects in the Northwest. His relentless determination. Almost there, he muttered, checking the carefully boxed red velvet cake on the passenger seat. Diana's favorite. The cake shop had stayed open late just for him, the owner recognizing the desperation in his voice when he called ahead. His phone buzzed with a text from Laurel, Diana's sister. "Where are you? Diana thinks you forgot her birthday." Vance smiled to himself. He hadn't forgotten a single one in their 11 years together. 8 years married, and he still remembered how Diana's eyes had lit up when he proposed on her birthday at Mount Rainier. The truth was, he'd been planning this surprise for weeks. The McAllister project in Portland had consumed him for the past 3 months, designing a multi-million-dollar lakefront property that would be featured in Architectural Digest. Diana had understood when he said he'd likely miss her birthday. She always understood his dedication to his craft, even when it took him away from home. What Diana didn't know was that Vance had pushed his team to finish ahead of schedule, working 18-hour days just so he could be home for her special day. Another text from Laurel. "She's had a few glasses of wine. Seems upset. You really should have called." "It's a surprise," he whispered, the excitement building as he turned onto their street. The Tudor-style home he designed for them 5 years ago came into view through the curtain of snow, warm lights glowing in the kitchen windows. Vance parked a few houses down, not wanting Diana to hear his truck. He grabbed the cake box and a small wrapped jewelry box from the glove compartment. Inside was a platinum pendant he'd designed himself, a stylized compass with their initials and wedding date engraved on the back. No matter how far apart they would always find their way back to each other. As he trudged through knee-deep snow, Vance's mind wandered to their last conversation. Diana had seemed distant lately. He attributed it to the stress of her new position as head of donor relations at the Palmer Children's Foundation. The promotion had come with longer hours and more responsibility. They were both building their dreams, sometimes at the cost of time together. Vance brushed the snow from his coat and hair before quietly opening the side door that led to the kitchen. He could hear Diana and Laurel's voices before he saw them. They were sitting at the kitchen island, wine glasses in hand, backs to him. "He didn't even call," Diana was saying, her words slightly slurred. 9 years of birthdays, and this is the first one he's completely forgotten. "Men," Laurel replied, pouring more wine into Diana's glass. "Always putting work first. Remember, Dad?" Vance was about to announce his presence when Diana's next words froze him in place. "God, I hope he crashes. I could use the insurance." The cake box nearly slipped from his fingers. Laurel laughed, clinking her glass against Diana's. Or at least a few months of silence. They both erupted in laughter, and Vance felt each sound like a physical blow. His throat closed, his chest constricting as though the air had been sucked from the room. With mechanical movements, he placed the cake box on the counter by the door. The women, engrossed in their conversation, didn't notice him or the snow melting in puddles at his feet. Vance slipped back out the way he came, the pendant box heavy in his pocket. Chapter 2. The Bitter Taste of Truth. Vance sat in his truck for nearly an hour, the engine off, watching snowflakes accumulate on the windshield until they blotted out the world. His mind replayed Diana's words on an endless loop, searching for some alternative meaning, some context that would make them less devastating. There was none. When numbness finally gave way to a cold, crawling clarity, Vance started the engine. He wouldn't confront Diana tonight, not when his thoughts were a storm more violent than the one swirling outside. He checked in the lakeside motel just after midnight, the tired desk clerk barely looking up from his paperback. In the Spartan room with its faded wallpaper and sagging mattress, Vance fell into the mechanical routines of a man functioning on autopilot, hanging his coat, removing his shoes, placing his wallet and keys on the nightstand. Sleep was impossible. Instead, he opened his laptop and began searching. It took only 20 minutes to access Diana's email. They had shared passwords early in their marriage, a gesture of transparency neither had revoked. What he found hollowed him out. Messages dating back 7 months. Hundreds of them. Kent, she had written, last night was incredible. I can't stop thinking about you. And Vance will be in Portland all month. Come over after work. Another. I feel alive with you in a way I never have with him. Kent Sawyer. It took Vance a moment to place the name. Then it clicked, the commercial developer who had consulted on the downtown riverfront project last year. Vance had even invited him to dinner at their home. The emails painted a clear picture. What had started as professional flirtation had escalated quickly. By the 3rd month, they were meeting at Kent's lake house whenever Vance traveled for work. Diana had created elaborate lies about working late, charity events, and visits to her mother. At 3 a.m., Vance found what he was looking for, proof that tonight's comment wasn't a momentary lapse. 3 weeks ago, Diana had written to Kent, "Sometimes I fantasize about starting over. Just you and me. No complications. No guilt. Do you think about that too?" Kent's reply had been brief, every day. The insurance money wouldn't hurt either. They had talked about his death, casually, as though he were an inconvenience rather than a husband of 8 years. The coldness that settled over Vance then wasn't anger. It was something deeper, more fundamental, as though the core of who he was had crystallized into something harder and unrecognizable. By dawn, Vance had formulated a plan. He drove back to the house at 7 a.m., timing his arrival for when Diana would be in the shower. Her routine as predictable as sunrise. The cake was still on the counter, untouched. A note had been placed beside it in Diana's flowing handwriting. "Vance, please call me when you get this. We need to talk." He ignored it, moving silently through the house he had designed with such care. Their bedroom still smelled of her perfume, Chanel No. 5, the same scent he had gifted her on their first anniversary. The bathroom door was closed, the shower running. Steam seeped from beneath the door. Vance packed. 3 suits, casual clothes, toiletries, his architecture awards, and the photograph of his parents. He took his personal files, his separate bank statements, and the external hard drive containing his designs. From the safe behind his office bookshelf, he retrieved their passports, birth certificates, and an inheritance from his father that Diana didn't know about. $250,000 in bearer bonds. The last thing he took was the framed sketch of their house, his original concept drawing, created the week after they were married. He had drawn their future together, believing it would stand forever. Before leaving, Vance left his own note on the kitchen counter. "I heard everything. Don't try to find me." He was back in his truck before Diana turned off the shower, driving toward a future he had never imagined for himself. Chapter 3. The Disappeared. Diana's scream echoed through the empty house when she found Vance's note. Her hangover instantly forgotten, she frantically called his cell phone only to hear it ring from inside his office drawer. He had left it behind. The cake on the counter told the story. Red velvet with cream cheese frosting, her favorite. The realization of what Vance must have heard crashed over her like an icy wave. "It was just stupid, drunk talk," she whispered to the empty kitchen. "I didn't mean it." But the emails to Kent in her sent folder said otherwise. Diana called Laurel in a panic. "He heard us," she said as soon as her sister answered. "Vance was here last night. He brought me a cake." There was a long pause. What exactly did he hear? Everything. The crash comment. The insurance. Your line about silence. "Jesus, Diana," Laurel breathed. "What are you going to do?" Diana had no answer. She tried Vance's office, his friends, his favorite places. Nobody had seen him. It was as though he had vanished into the snowstorm. By the 2nd day, panic had morphed into desperate rationalization. He would cool off and come back. They would talk. She would explain about Kent, how it had started as harmless flirtation during a vulnerable time when Vance was always away. How it had grown into something that made her feel desired when she and Vance had been growing apart. She wouldn't mention how Kent made her feel alive, taking her to exclusive restaurants and lavish hotel suites. How his spontaneity contrasted with Vance's nature. How Kent had whispered promises of a life Diana had started to believe she wanted. By the end of the first week, Diana had left 37 voicemails on Vance's office phone. She had driven to Portland, convincing the hotel manager to let her into Vance's room, only to find he had checked out the day after her birthday. Kent was no help. When she told him Vance had discovered their affair, his first question had been whether Vance had evidence that could damage his reputation. "He's my husband, Kent," Diana had snapped. "I need to find him." Kent's voice had turned cold. "You said you were leaving him anyway. This just speeds things up." The truth was, Diana had never fully committed to leaving Vance. The fantasy had been easier than the reality. Despite her complaints and the excitement of the affair, a life without Vance had been unimaginable, until now, when she was forced to live it. 3 weeks after Vance disappeared, Diana received a formal letter from Wilson and Crane, attorneys at law. Vance had retained their services for an impending divorce filing. The letter was clinical, detailing his intention to claim abandonment and infidelity. It requested she vacate their home within 30 days, as it had been purchased with his premarital assets. Diana broke down, finally confessing everything to her mother. Margaret Preston had always adored Vance, appreciating his solid reliability that reminded her of her late husband. "How could you?" Margaret asked, her disappointment palpable. "That man worshipped the ground you walked on." "I made a mistake," Diana whispered. "A mistake is forgetting an anniversary or saying something hurtful in anger," Margaret replied. "This was a choice you made every day for months." That night, alone in the house that still held Vance's presence in every carefully considered angle and thoughtful design element, Diana wrote him a letter. She poured out her regret, her explanations, her promises to make amends. "Please come home," she wrote. "We can fix this. I'll do anything." She sent it to his attorney's office. The reply came 3 days later. Her letter returned unopened with a stamp. Refused. Diana didn't know that Vance had been watching from afar. Using skills honed through years of detail-oriented work, he had created a new temporary identity. He had rented a small apartment in a neighboring city under the name Victor Miller, paying cash and keeping to himself. From this vantage point, he meticulously studied Diana and Kent's patterns, their communications, their vulnerabilities. He watched as Diana grew increasingly desperate, as Kent became more dismissive of her concerns. Vance wasn't planning a mere divorce. He was architecting something far more comprehensive, a complete dismantling of the lives of those who had betrayed him. In his sparsely furnished apartment, Vance spread out documents, photographs, and notes. He was designing his magnum opus, a blueprint for the perfect revenge. 3 weeks later, she regretted everything she said. He murmured to himself, recalling the attorney's description of Diana's distraught state when she received his letter. Too late. On his wall calendar, he circled a date 3 months in the future. Phase 1 would begin then. Until that day, he would remain a ghost, watching, planning, and preparing for what would be the coldest winter Diana and Kent had ever experienced. Chapter 4. The Architect of Misfortune. Montgomery College's campus was quiet on this Sunday morning. Vance sat in his car, watching students trudge through slush to the library. 3 months had passed since he'd disappeared from Diana's life, and he'd used that time to meticulously craft his new identity while laying the groundwork for his revenge. He checked his watch. Professor Howard should be arriving any minute. Right on cue, a silver Volvo pulled into the faculty parking lot. Vance straightened his tie and grabbed the portfolio beside him. "Professor Howard," Vance called, approaching the older man who was retrieving a stack of papers from his passenger seat. "Victor Miller. Thank you for meeting me on your day off." Howard shook his hand firmly. "Any friend of Bernard's gets my time. Though I admit, I'm curious why one of Seattle's premier landscape architects needs my expertise." Bernard Kovic had been Vance's mentor at Cornell, and his recommendation had opened this door. What Howard didn't know was that Victor Miller was a carefully constructed alias, with credentials subtly altered from Vance's own impressive resume. "I'm working on a special project," Vance explained as they walked toward Howard's office. A complete reimagining of the River Point development. Howard's eyebrows shot up. Kent Sawyer's project? I heard it was stalled due to environmental concerns. Exactly why I'm here. Your research on urban water management systems could provide the solution. Inside Howard's cluttered office, Vance laid out his proposal. A revolutionary design that would solve the environmental issues while significantly improving the project's appeal. It was brilliant work, the kind that had made Vance's reputation in the industry. This could save the project, Howard said, examining the designs. Would you mind if I shared this with my colleague at the Environmental Review Board? He's overseeing the River Point case. Vance smiled. That's precisely what I was hoping for. What Howard couldn't know was that Vance had designed the solution with a fatal flaw, one that would only become apparent after implementation, causing delays, additional reviews, and mounting costs for Kent Sawyer's flagship development. As they parted ways, Howard asked, "Why aren't you taking this directly to Sawyer Development? This would make you a hero in their eyes." Vance's expression remained neutral. "I prefer to let the work speak for itself." The truth was more calculated. By introducing the design through respected academic channels, it would appear as a stroke of good fortune for Kent, until it wasn't. That evening, Vance drove to Bellwood Heights, an exclusive neighborhood where Kent Sawyer lived with his wife, Blair, and their 2 children. The 5-bedroom colonial with its manicured lawn represented everything Kent projected to the world: success, stability, traditional values. All eyes, of course. Vance parked a block away and watched Kent's house through binoculars. Sunday dinner was a Sawyer family tradition, according to Diana's emails. Kent maintained the facade of devoted family man, even while pursuing his affair. Right on schedule, Kent emerged from the house at 8:15 p.m., kissing his wife goodbye on the porch. He told her he had an early meeting preparation, but Vance knew his real destination, the Highland Suite at the Westin Hotel, where Diana would be waiting. Vance followed at a safe distance, watching Kent's Range Rover pull into the hotel's underground parking. 10 minutes later, Diana's Audi arrived. Through his zoom lens, Vance captured them embracing in the elevator, Kent's hand inappropriately low on Diana's back. More evidence for his growing file. While they were occupied, Vance made a call to Blair Sawyer's personal line, using a voice modulator. "Mrs. Sawyer? I have information about your husband you need to see." He disconnected before she could ask questions, then sent an anonymous email to her personal account, the one Kent didn't know she had, which she used to communicate with her sister about Kent's suspected infidelities. The email contained a single image, Kent and Diana entering the hotel elevator, timestamped 20 minutes ago, along with the hotel name and room number. Vance didn't wait to see the fallout. That would come later. Instead, he drove to Diana's office at the Palmer Foundation, using his architectural firm's master key to enter the building, a perk from when his company had redesigned their offices 2 years ago. In Diana's office, he planted a small device beneath her desk, a modified signal repeater that would capture her phone's data whenever she was in range. It would allow him to monitor her communications, including those with Kent. Phase 2 was now in motion. Over the next 2 weeks, Vance collected a treasure trove of information. Diana and Kent were planning a future together, though Kent was stalling on leaving his wife due to potential financial repercussions. Diana was becoming increasingly frustrated with his hesitation. More importantly, Vance discovered that Kent had leveraged the River Point development far beyond what his investors knew. If the project failed, Kent faced personal financial ruin. Armed with this knowledge, Vance moved to the next phase. Using an anonymous profile, he contacted 3 key investors in River Point, sharing selected environmental reports that suggested the project was built on unstable regulatory ground. As predicted, the investors began asking uncomfortable questions. Kent was forced to call emergency meetings to reassure them. The strain was showing. In his communications with Diana, he was becoming short-tempered and distant. Meanwhile, Blair Sawyer had hired a private investigator. Kent was now sleeping in the guest room, negotiating desperately to save his marriage and family reputation. Diana, sensing Kent pulling away, grew increasingly clingy, threatening to expose their affair to his business associates if he abandoned her. "It's all falling apart," Kent texted Diana late one night. I need time to fix this. Diana's response was telling. You promised me a future. I gave up everything for you. To which Kent replied, you chose to cheat on your husband. That's on you. Vance read their exchange with cold satisfaction. The first cracks were forming in their relationship, and he hadn't even implemented the main components of his plan. The final element of Phase 2 arrived in a thick envelope from his attorney. Diana had been officially served divorce papers at her office, a public humiliation Vance had specifically requested. The timing coincided with the Palmer Foundation's annual donor gala, ensuring Diana would have to face her colleagues and benefactors with the fresh shame of her exposed infidelity. The photographs and evidence included with the filing were comprehensive, dating back to the beginning of the affair. There would be no question of fault in the proceedings. Vance looked at the calendar on his wall. In 3 days, Professor Howard would present Victor Miller's solution to the Environmental Review Board, with Kent Sawyer in attendance. The trap was nearly set. For the first time since hearing Diana's cruel words 3 months ago, Vance allowed himself a small smile. The architect of misfortune was just getting started. Chapter 5. Structural Weaknesses. The Peninsula Hotel's crystal ballroom glittered with Seattle's elite. Kent Sawyer worked the room like a politician, his practiced smile never reaching his eyes. After 3 weeks of environmental review delays on River Point, this charity auction was a chance to reassure investors and partners that everything was under control. From a shadowed corner, Vance observed the performance. In the months since he'd begun his plan, he had altered his appearance, growing a neatly trimmed beard, darkening his hair, and wearing contacts instead of his distinctive square-framed glasses. No one from his former life would recognize Bennett Walsh, the name on his auction paddle. Mr. Walsh, I don't believe we've met. A silver-haired man extended his hand. Theodore Blackwell, West Coast Development. Vance shook his hand firmly. Bennett Walsh, I'm new to Seattle's development scene. What brings you to our little fundraiser? Looking for investment opportunities. I'm more interested in River Point. Fascinating project. Blackwell's expression tightened almost imperceptibly. Sawyer's venture? It has potential despite the current challenges. I heard an elegant solution was proposed at the Environmental Review Board, Vance said. A complete redesign of the water management system. Yes, by some academic consultant. Howard's protege. Blackwell leaned closer. Between us, it saved Sawyer's hide. He was weeks away from default. Vance nodded thoughtfully. I'd love an introduction to Sawyer. Of course. He's over by the champagne fountain, talking to. Blackwell paused, eyes narrowing slightly. Well, that's interesting. That's Diana Mercer with him. Her husband was a brilliant architect who vanished a few months back. Tragic situation. Vance kept his expression neutral as he glanced over. Diana was wearing a black dress he didn't recognize, her hair shorter than when he'd last seen her. She looked thinner, her smile strained as she stood slightly too close to Kent. I heard whispers they might be involved, Blackwell continued. Industry gossip, you understand. Her husband's firm designed several of Sawyer's earlier projects. How? Convenient, Vance replied, his voice leveled despite the cold fury churning beneath. Blackwell escorted him across the room. Kent, someone you should meet. Bennett Walsh, interested in River Point. Kent's handshake was firm, his smile practiced. Always pleased to meet potential investors. Up close, Vance could see the strain behind Kent's facade. The slightly bloodshot eyes, the almost imperceptible tremor in his hand. The pressure was taking its toll. Diana stood frozen beside Kent, her glass of champagne halfway to her lips. Though Vance's appearance had changed, something in her expression suggested a ghost of recognition. Mrs. Mercer, Vance said with a slight nod, using his altered voice. I've heard of your work with the Palmer Foundation. Diana's brow furrowed slightly. Have we met before, Mr. Walsh? I don't believe so. I would remember. Kent, oblivious to the undercurrents, launched into his rehearsed River Point pitch. Vance listened with practiced interest, asking questions that subtly highlighted the project's vulnerabilities while appearing supportive. The environmental solution is ingenious, Vance commented. Who designed it? Kent's smile faltered. A consultant. Victor Miller. I'd like to meet him. Perhaps he could consult on my upcoming projects. Unfortunately, he's become unavailable. We're implementing his design under Professor Howard's supervision. Vance nodded, suppressing his satisfaction. Phase 3 was proceeding perfectly. Victor Miller had disappeared as mysteriously as he had appeared, leaving only his flawed design behind. As the evening progressed, Vance bid aggressively on several auction items, establishing himself as a wealthy potential investor. When Ken invited him to tour the River Point site the following week, Vance accepted graciously. Diana remained quiet through most of the exchanges, her eyes returning to Vance with unsettled curiosity. As the event wound down, Vance made sure to pass close to her at the coat check. "You seem troubled, Mrs. Mercer," he said quietly. Diana startled. "I'm fine. Just, you remind me of someone. Someone important to you?" Her eyes clouded. "Someone I lost." Vance leaned slightly closer. "Be careful of the company you keep, Mrs. Mercer. Some structures aren't built to last." Before she could respond, he was gone, disappearing into the night like a warning she couldn't quite grasp. The next morning, Professor Howard received a disturbing email from the Environmental Review Board. Secondary testing had revealed potential issues with the Miller design, not enough to halt implementation, but enough to require additional monitoring and potential modifications. By noon, Ken was in full crisis mode. His primary lender was expressing concerns about the additional costs and timeline extensions. 3 smaller investors had already pulled out. Diana, increasingly relegated to the sidelines of Kent's life as his marriage and business troubles consumed him, received a curt text. "Need to postpone weekend. Dealing with project issues." It was the 5th cancellation this month. Their affair, once passionate, had devolved into hurried meetings and tense conversations about Kent's mounting problems. The future he had promised seemed increasingly unlikely. Diana poured herself a glass of wine, staring out at the garden Vance had designed for her 35th birthday. Japanese maples and carefully placed stones creating a sanctuary she no longer deserved. Her phone rang, the divorce attorney Vance had hired. "Mrs. Mercer, I'm calling to confirm you've reviewed the settlement offer." Diana swallowed hard. "It's generous. More than fair, considering. Mr. Mercer has agreed to leave the house to you, with certain stipulations. He requests your answer by Friday." After ending the call, Diana sat in the growing darkness. Vance's settlement offer had surprised everyone. The house, a fair financial package, no drawn-out court battle. Her own attorney had called it suspiciously generous. What Diana couldn't understand was why. After discovering her betrayal, after her cruel words, why would Vance be generous at all? Unless he had something else planned. The thought sent a chill through her that had nothing to do with the evening air. She remembered the strange man at the auction, Bennett Walsh, and his unsettling familiarity. Diana pulled out her laptop and searched for Bennett Walsh. Nothing significant appeared. On impulse, she tried Victor Miller, the mysterious consultant who had supposedly saved River Point. Again, nothing substantial. A terrible suspicion began to form. She searched for recent images of Vance Mercer, finding only those from before his disappearance. Would a beard and darker hair be enough of a disguise? Could it possibly be? Her phone rang again. "Kent. We need to talk," he said without preamble. "Something's wrong with the Miller design. It looked perfect, but now there are issues appearing with every new test. It's almost as if what?" Diana asked, her suspicion growing stronger. As if it was designed to fail gradually, to look perfect at first, then develop compounding problems. Diana's hand trembled as she set down her wine glass. "Kent, this Victor Miller. Did you ever meet him in person?" "Only his representative." "Why? What about Bennett Walsh? The investor from the auction? What about him?" "He toured River Point yesterday. Asked a lot of technical questions." Diana closed her eyes, pieces falling into place. "I think we need to consider the possibility that Vance isn't as gone as we thought." There was a long silence on the line. "That's not possible. Your husband was an architect, not some criminal mastermind. He was the most methodical, detail-oriented person I've ever known," Diana countered. "And I hurt him deeply." Another pause. "Even if you're right, which is paranoid, What could he possibly hope to accomplish? Diana looked around at the house Vance had designed for their future together, remembering his words from years ago. Architecture isn't just about creating beautiful spaces. It's about understanding how people live, what they need, and sometimes what will make them fall. I think, she said slowly, he's designed our downfall. Chapter 6. Point of No Return. The Riverpoint sales office buzzed with anxious energy. Kent paced behind his mahogany desk, phone pressed to his ear, voice low and urgent. We need those additional tests expedited, he insisted. The lender's getting nervous. Across from him, Diana sat rigidly in a visitor's chair, her attention fixed on the architectural model of Riverpoint that dominated the center of the room. What had once represented Kent's crowning achievement now seemed to mock him, a miniature version of his collapsing ambitions. As Kent ended his call, the door opened and Blair Sawyer strode in, her Louboutins clicking aggressively on the hardwood floor. She stopped abruptly at the sight of Diana. Well, Blair said, her voice arctic. I assumed I'd find you here. Kent's face drained of color. Blair, this isn't. Spare me, she interrupted, placing a manila envelope on his desk. Divorce papers. My lawyer says I'm entitled to half of everything, including whatever's left of Riverpoint after your mismanagement. Diana stood to leave. I should go. Stay, Blair commanded. You deserve to hear this too. She turned back to Kent. Did you really think I wouldn't find out? The private investigator had you followed for weeks. Hotel receipts, photographs, text messages, everything. Kent loosened his tie. We can discuss this at home. There is no more home for you, Blair replied. The lots have been changed. Your things are in storage. She glanced at Diana. I assume your marital bed is available, since you've been so generous with it. Diana flinched as though struck. I never meant. What exactly did you think would happen? Blair demanded. That he'd leave his family? His children? For what? A midlife crisis with a woman who betrayed her own husband. Kent stepped between them. That's enough, Blair. No, it's not nearly enough. Blair's composure cracked slightly. 11 years of marriage, Kent. I supported you when you had nothing but ambition and charm. I believed in you when no one else would invest in your first development. She grabbed the Riverpoint model, lifting it above her head. Blair, don't! Kent lunged forward. The model crashed to the floor, breaking into pieces, a symbolic destruction that made Diana step back in horror. Perfect metaphor, isn't it? Blair said quietly, suddenly calm. Everything you build eventually falls apart. After Blair left, Kent collapsed into his chair, head in his hands. Diana stood among the ruins of the model, uncertain what to say. Move in with me, she finally offered, until this blows over. Kent looked up, his expression shifting from despair to derision. Move in with you? To the house your architect husband designed? While my company implodes and my wife takes half of everything. He laughed bitterly. What kind of future do you imagine we have now, Diana? You said we would be together. You promised. I promised a lot of things, Kent interrupted. To a lot of people. Promises get broken. The truth of his character revealed itself in that moment, stripped of charm and pretense. Diana saw him clearly for the first time, not the exciting alternative to her stable marriage, but a man who discarded commitments when they became inconvenient. So that's it, she asked. After everything I've sacrificed, Kent's phone rang. He checked the screen. It's the bank. I have to take this. He looked at Diana expectantly. We'll talk later. Dismissed, Diana gathered her purse and walked out, the shattered model crunching beneath her feet, a sound that would haunt her dreams. Outside, rain fell in typical Seattle fashion, a persistent, melancholy drizzle. Diana sat in her car, unable to start the engine, overwhelmed by the wreckage of her life. Her affair was disintegrating, her divorce proceeding, her reputation in tatters. Her phone chimed with a text from an unknown number. The foundation always reveals its flaws under pressure. Diana froze, reading the message again. The phrasing, clinical, architectural, reminded her immediately of Vance. She typed back, "Who is this?" No response came. With trembling fingers, she called Laurel. "I think Vance is back," she said when her sister answered. I think he's been orchestrating everything. River Point's problems, Kent's marriage falling apart, all of it. Laurel sighed. Diana, you need to stop this. Vance is gone. He's moved on. Not everything is about you. You don't understand. There was a man at the auction who seemed familiar. And Kent's project is failing because of design flaws in a system created by someone no one has actually met. Listen to yourself, Laurel said gently. You're suggesting Vance created multiple false identities and engineered the failure of a multi-million-dollar development. Why? For revenge? That's not the Vance we knew. That's just it, Diana whispered. We didn't really know him. Not what he's capable of when hurt badly enough. After ending the call, Diana drove home in a daze. The house, their house, felt emptier than ever. She wandered from room to room, seeing Vance's influence in every carefully considered detail. The southern exposure in the kitchen that captured morning light. The reading nook in the living room, perfectly positioned to catch afternoon sun. The master bathroom with heated floors because she always complained about cold tiles. He had designed it all for her comfort, for their life together. In his office, untouched since his departure, Diana sat at his drawing table and opened the bottom drawer. Inside was a leather-bound journal she had given him for Christmas years ago. Unlike his digital work files, this was where Vance sketched his initial concepts, his most personal creative expressions. The last entry was dated 3 days before her birthday. It was a concept for a garden expansion, a small reflecting pool surrounded by her favorite lilies. A note in the margin read, Diana's birthday surprise. Install in spring. He had been planning for their future even as she was destroying it. Diana closed the journal, a sob catching in her throat. She moved to replace it when she noticed something at the back of the drawer. A small card with an address written in Vance's precise handwriting. The address was in Queen and an upscale neighborhood across town. Beside it was a single key. Without allowing herself to overthink, Diana grabbed her coat and the key. 20 minutes later, she stood before an elegant townhouse with a discreet for sale sign in the manicured front yard. The key fit perfectly in the lock. Inside, the space was immaculate, but clearly lived in. Minimal furniture, architectural journals on the coffee table, a half-empty bottle of Vance's preferred scotch on the kitchen counter. On the dining table lay a single photograph, their wedding day, the frame cracked down the middle. I wondered when you'd find this place. Diana whirled around. Vance stood in the doorway to what appeared to be a home office, his appearance altered, but his presence unmistakable. It is you, she whispered. Bennett Walsh. Victor Miller. Vance's smile didn't reach his eyes. Among others. Why? Why go to all this trouble? Do you remember what you said that night? Vance asked, his voice eerily calm. About hoping I would crash? About the insurance money? Diana stepped toward him. It was stupid drunk talk. I didn't mean... You meant every word, Vance interrupted. I read all your emails to Kent. The ones where you discussed your future together. The ones where you mocked our marriage. Tears filled Diana's eyes. I made a terrible mistake. But this, what you've been doing, it's calculated destruction. No, Vance corrected. It's architectural precision. I'm simply exposing structural weaknesses that already existed. Kent's project was financially overextended. His marriage was built on deception. Your affair was founded on fantasy. And us? Diana asked. Was our marriage just another flawed structure? Something flickered in Vance's eyes, the first genuine emotion he'd shown. Our marriage was the only thing I ever built that I believed would last forever. Then stop this, Diana pleaded. We can rebuild. Start over. Vance shook his head. Some things, once broken, can't be repaired. They can only be demolished to make way for something new. He walked to a desk and picked up a folder. The final divorce papers. I've agreed to your attorney's last requests. It's a fair settlement. Diana didn't take the folder. I don't want a settlement. I want my husband back. That man died the night he heard his wife wish for his death. Vance placed the folder on the table between them. This is the point of no return, Diana. Sign, and we both move forward separately. Refuse, and I continue dismantling everything Kent Sawyer has built, with you as collateral damage. Is that a threat? It's a blueprint, Vance replied. One I've been following meticulously. Diana sank into a chair, the reality of her situation crashing down. "You become someone I don't recognize." "So did you," Vance said quietly. "The difference is I know exactly who I am now." He walked to the door, pausing with his hand on the knob. "You have until tomorrow to sign. After that, the settlement offer expires, and things get considerably less generous." After he left, Diana sat alone in the gathering darkness, the unsigned divorce papers before her like a crossroads. Outside, rain continued to fall on a city that suddenly felt foreign and hostile. The key to the townhouse lay heavy in her palm, the last connection to the man she had loved and lost through her own actions. But not lost completely, she realized. He had left the key where she would eventually find it. He had allowed her to discover his temporary sanctuary. Perhaps, somewhere beneath the coldness and calculation, a small ember of their connection remained. Diana pulled out her phone and dialed Kent's number, her decision crystallizing with each ring. "Kent," she said when he answered. "We need to talk about Vance Mercer." Chapter 7. Controlled Demolition. The law offices of Wilson and Crane occupied the 32nd floor of Seattle's Columbia Center, offering sweeping views of Puget Sound. Diana sat rigidly in the conference room, flanked by her attorney, Patricia Winters, while across the polished mahogany table, Harold Wilson represented Vance's interests. Vance himself was conspicuously absent. "My client has authorized me to present this final settlement offer," Wilson stated, sliding a document across the table. "As you can see, it's incredibly generous given the circumstances." Patricia reviewed the terms, eyebrows rising slightly. "The house remains with Mrs. Mercer, along with a significant cash settlement. Mr. Mercer retains his business interests and intellectual property rights." She glanced at Diana. "These terms are more than fair." Diana stared at the signature line. "And if I sign, this ends?" "Everything." Wilson's expression revealed nothing. "The divorce will be finalized within 30 days. "That's not what I meant," Diana said, meeting his gaze. "Does Vance stop his campaign against Kent Sawyer?" A flicker of surprise crossed Wilson's face before his professional mask returned. "I'm not aware of any such campaign. Mr. Mercer has been focused solely on his architectural practice." Diana laughed bitterly. "Under which name? Vance Mercer? Victor Miller? Bennett Walsh? How many identities has he created while systematically destroying River Point development?" Patricia placed a warning hand on Diana's arm. "My client is understandably emotional. Perhaps we could have a moment alone." Wilson nodded, gathering his papers. "Of course. I'll give you 10 minutes to discuss. But I should note that this offer expires today." After he left, Patricia turned to Diana. "What are you doing? This settlement is extraordinarily generous. Most clients in your position would sign immediately." "It's too generous," Diana insisted. "Vance is using it to distract me while he completes whatever he's planning for Kent." "Diana," Patricia said gently, "I've handled hundreds of divorces. Sometimes, despite painful circumstances, one party simply wants a clean break without prolonged conflict." "You don't know Vance," Diana replied. "He designs with purpose. Every element serves the overall vision." Patricia sighed. "Even if you're right about Mr. Mercer's involvement with River Point's problems, which sounds frankly paranoid, what exactly do you hope to accomplish by refusing these terms?" Diana considered the question. What did she want? To save Kent from financial ruin? To salvage a relationship that had revealed itself as hollow and self-serving? Or was it something deeper, a desperate need to maintain some connection to Vance, even an adversarial one? Before she could answer, her phone chimed with a text message from Kent. "Environmental Board just suspended River Point permits. Need to talk now." Diana made her decision. "I need time to consider the offer." "That's not an option," Patricia warned. "Mr. Wilson made it clear." "Then negotiate an extension," Diana interrupted, standing. "I have somewhere I need to be." 30 minutes later, Diana pulled into River Point's muddy construction site. Work had halted, with equipment sitting idle and workers gathered in clusters, faces concerned as they collected tools and personal items. Kent stood in the site office trailer, surrounded by blueprints and engineering reports, his face ashen as he barked orders into his phone. When he saw Diana, he abruptly ended his call. "Where have you been?" "I've been trying to reach you." "Meeting with divorce attorneys," Diana replied. "What happened here?" Kent ran a hand through his disheveled hair. The Environmental Board found significant discrepancies between the approved plans and actual implementation. They've suspended all permits pending a full investigation. "How is that possible?" "You've had inspectors on site weekly." "That's the thing," Kent said, lowering his voice despite them being alone. "The discrepancies weren't there last week. It's as if key components of the design changed overnight." He picked up a blueprint, pointing to technical specifications. "These drainage calculations, they've been altered from the original submission." Diana studied the complex diagrams, understanding little of the technical details, but recognizing the implication. "You're saying someone tampered with the plans?" "Not just the plans," Kent replied grimly. "Physical components on site have been substituted with inferior materials. Someone authorized changes that deliberately undermine the project." The office door opened, and a tall, distinguished man in a tailored suit entered, accompanied by two uniformly serious individuals. "Mr. Sawyer," the man announced, "I'm Special Agent Donovan, FBI. These are Agents Clark and Rodriguez. We have some questions about River Point development." Kent's face drained of remaining color. "FBI? There must be some mistake." "No mistake," Donovan replied, producing a document. "We have a warrant to search these premises and seize all financial and technical documents related to this project. We're investigating allegations of fraud, bribery of public officials, and violations of federal environmental regulations." As the agents began collecting files and electronics, Kent turned to Diana, his voice a desperate whisper. "This isn't happening. Someone is setting me up." Diana felt a cold certainty settle over her. "Not someone. Vance. Your husband? That's impossible. He's an architect, not some criminal mastermind." "He's both," Diana replied. "He's been planning this for months, creating false identities, manipulating the project from multiple angles." "I try to warn you." Kent grabbed her arm. "You need to help me. Tell them this is all some elaborate revenge scheme." Diana gently removed his hand. "With what proof?" "Everything appears perfectly legitimate. The environmental issues are real. The altered plans exist. If there's financial impropriety, they'll find evidence of that too." "So you're abandoning me? After everything?" The question hung between them, heavy with irony. Diana thought of Vance driving through a snowstorm to surprise her, only to hear her wish for his death. She thought of Kent's casual dismissal when his wife discovered their affair. She thought of her own selfishness that had set everything in motion. "I'm sorry, Kent," she said finally, "but I need to sign those divorce papers." As Diana walked away, Agent Donovan intercepted her. "Ms. Mercer? We'd like to speak with you as well." "About what?" "Your husband's connection to this project, for starters, and your relationship with Mr. Sawyer." Diana felt a moment of panic before steadying herself. "Of course. Whatever you need." For 3 hours, Diana answered questions in a sterile room at the FBI's Seattle field office. She provided details about Vance's architectural work on previous Sawyer development projects, her role at the Palmer Foundation, and admitted to her personal relationship with Kent when directly asked. What she didn't share were her suspicions about Vance's elaborate revenge. Without proof, it would sound delusional, the desperate attempts of a guilty woman to deflect blame. When finally released, Diana drove directly to Wilson and Crane's offices, where Patricia waited with barely concealed irritation. "They've agreed to extend the offer until tomorrow morning," Patricia informed her. "Though I strongly advised against asking for the extension." Diana took the settlement papers. "I'll sign them now." As she added her signature to each indicated line, Diana felt a strange combination of defeat and relief. This chapter of her life was ending, not as she had once imagined, but perhaps as she deserved. "Will I see him?" she asked as Patricia collected the signed documents. "At the final hearing? I wouldn't count on it," Patricia replied. "Mr. Wilson has authorization to represent Mr. Mercer in his absence." That night, Alone in the house that would soon be legally hers, but would always feel like Vance's creation, Diana opened her laptop and typed Bennett Walsh into the search bar. Nothing significant appeared, as before. On impulse, she tried a different search. Vance Mercer New Projects. The results made her breath catch. A major architectural journal announced Vance Mercer's return from a sabbatical with a prestigious new commission. The Westlake Cultural Center, a $200 million project previously rumored to be awarded to Kent Sawyer's firm. The article quoted Theodore Blackwell of West Coast Development. After the unfortunate issues with River Point Development, we sought a more reliable partner. Mercer Architectural brings unparalleled integrity and vision to this landmark project. Diana closed her laptop, a bitter smile forming. Vance hadn't just destroyed Kent's project. He had claimed the prize Kent had been pursuing for years. The controlled demolition was complete, with Vance emerging stronger than before. Her phone chimed with a text from an unknown number. Settlement received. Goodbye, Diana. She stared at the message, tears blurring her vision. No hate, no anger, just a clinical finality that somehow hurt more than rage ever could. Diana typed back, I'm sorry for everything. I never deserved you. No response came. None was expected. Chapter 8. From the Ashes. 6 months after signing the divorce papers, Diana stood in the empty living room of what had once been her dream home. Moving boxes lined the walls, labeled in her meticulous handwriting, kitchen, bedroom, personal. The furniture had already been removed, some sold, some donated, a few cherished pieces in storage until she found a permanent place. The house had sold for well above asking price, despite Seattle's cooling real estate market. The irony wasn't lost on Diana. Vance's architectural reputation added significant value to the property he had designed for their life together. Her phone rang. Laurel, how's the packing going? Her sister asked. Almost done, Diana replied, her voice echoing in the empty space. The movers come tomorrow for the boxes. Are you sure about this move? Bend is beautiful, but it's so far from everyone you know. Diana gazed out the window at the garden, now in the care of strangers. That's part of the appeal. I need a fresh start, away from the whispers and sympathetic looks. The past 6 months had been a study in public humiliation. Kent Sawyer's indictment on multiple federal charges had made headlines across the Pacific Northwest. Diana's connection to him, both professional and personal, had become public knowledge, forcing her resignation from the Palmer Foundation despite her cooperation with investigators. Laurel sighed. I still think you could rebuild here. People forget scandals eventually. I don't want to rebuild here, Diana said firmly. Too many ghosts. After ending the call, Diana wandered through the empty rooms, memories emerging like photographs in developing solution. Vance carrying her across the threshold after they moved in. Holiday gatherings with friends. Quiet Sunday mornings with coffee and crosswords. In the master bedroom, she opened the closet one last time, ensuring nothing had been overlooked. On the top shelf, her hand brushed against something solid, a book. Pulling it down, she realized it was a leather-bound journal she had never seen before. The first page bore Vance's distinctive handwriting. Personal projects and concepts, not for client review. Diana hesitated, feeling like an intruder despite technically still owning the house. Curiosity overcame her reluctance. She sat on the floor, back against the wall, and began to read. The journal contained conceptual sketches and notes for projects Vance had dreamed of but never pursued. A sustainable mountain retreat, an urban vertical garden, a children's hospital with spaces designed to reduce anxiety and promote healing. In the middle of the journal, Diana found something unexpected, detailed plans for renovating their home to accommodate children. A nursery with perfect southern exposure. A playroom that could later convert to a study space for teenagers. Safety features seamlessly integrated into the aesthetic design. Dated 3 years ago, when they had been trying to conceive. Diana traced the pencil lines with trembling fingers. They had stopped fertility treatments 2 years ago, the disappointment and hormonal roller coaster straining their relationship. She had assumed Vance had moved on from the idea of children, focusing instead on his growing firm. These plans proved otherwise. He had kept hoping, kept designing for the family they might have had. Tears fell onto the pages as Diana continued reading. The final entry was dated 1 week before her fateful birthday. It wasn't an architectural design, but a list. 1. Complete Portland project early 2. Surprise Diana for birthday 3. Propose second honeymoon. Italy in spring 4. Revisit family planning discussion. Adoption 5. Prioritize us above everything else. He had been planning to save their marriage while she was actively destroying it. Diana closed the journal, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what she had thrown away. Not just Vance's love, but his vision for their future. One she had shared but had been too weak, too selfish to honor. Her phone rang again, an unknown number. "Hello," she answered, wiping tears. "Mrs. Mercer?" a formal voice inquired. "This is Westlake Medical Center. You're listed as the emergency contact for Kent Sawyer." Diana frowned in confusion. "There must be some mistake. We haven't spoken in months. Mr. Sawyer was admitted 2 hours ago, following an incident at the Federal Detention Center. He specifically requested we contact you." "What kind of incident?" A pause. "I'm not at liberty to share details over the phone. Mr. Sawyer is conscious and asking to see you." Diana's first instinct was to refuse. Kent had shown his true character when their affair was exposed: selfish, calculating, willing to sacrifice others to protect himself. His recent letters from detention, alternating between self-pity and thinly veiled accusations that she had somehow betrayed him, had gone unanswered. Yet something compelled her to agree. Perhaps a need for closure before leaving Seattle permanently. Or maybe simple human compassion for someone who, despite everything, had once meant something to her. "I'll be there within the hour," she said finally. Westlake Medical Center security was enhanced due to Kent's status as a federal prisoner. Diana was escorted through multiple checkpoints, her ID verified 3 times before being allowed into the secure wing. Kent lay handcuffed to the hospital bed, a bandage wrapped around his throat, his normally tan complexion ashen. A uniformed officer stood at attention by the door. 10 minutes, the officer stated flatly. As Diana approached the bed, Kent's eyes fluttered open. He attempted to speak, but winced in pain. "Don't try to talk," Diana said. "The nurse told me about your throat." Kent reached for a notepad on the side table, scribbling with difficulty before turning it toward her. "He found me." "Who found you?" Kent wrote again. "Your husband. He was there." Diana's blood ran cold. "Vance?" "At the detention center." Kent nodded weakly, writing, "Architectural consult for new wing." "Saw me in yard." Smiled. "And then what?" Diana asked, though she was beginning to understand. "That night, 2 inmates. Shanks. Said I was dead man." Diana stepped back from the bed. "Are you suggesting Vance somehow orchestrated an attack on you in federal prison?" Kent's eyes hardened as he wrote, "Not suggestion. Fact. Guard stopped it. Next time maybe not." "This is absurd," Diana said, gathering her purse. "Vance is an architect, not some prison gang leader. You've made powerful enemies all on your own, Kent." As she turned to leave, Kent scrawled one final message, tapping the notepad urgently until she looked. "He's not finished with either of us." Outside the hospital, Diana sat in her car, hands shaking too badly to insert the key into the ignition. Kent's accusation seemed paranoid, delusional, the desperate attempt of a fallen man to blame others for his circumstances. Yet hadn't she harbored similar suspicions? Hadn't she seen firsthand Vance's methodical dismantling of Kent's business and reputation? Diana pulled out her phone and searched for news about Vance Mercer. The results showed a man ascending to new professional heights. The Westlake Cultural Center project progressing ahead of schedule, a profile in Architectural Digest, a guest lectureship at Cornell. There is even a photograph of him at a charity gala last month, accompanied by Elise Montgomery, the elegant museum curator who had once commissioned Vance to design her family's Bainbridge Island home. They made a striking couple, both tall and distinguished, with an air of cultured confidence. Diana set down her phone, a hollow feeling expanding in her chest. Vance had moved on completely, building a new life while she remained trapped in the wreckage of her choices. Kent's paranoid accusations were likely just that, paranoia born of guilt and fear. Yet as she drove through Seattle's rain-slick streets for one of the last times, Diana couldn't shake the sensation of being watched. At each red light, she found herself scanning nearby vehicles, searching for a familiar silhouette. At home, she double-checked the locks before continuing to pack. The journal she had found remained on the kitchen counter, a painful reminder of what might have been. As she sealed the final box, her doorbell rang. Diana froze, heart racing. It was nearly midnight, too late for any legitimate visitor. Through the peephole, she saw a uniformed delivery person holding a small package. Cautiously, she opened the door. Diana Mercer, the young woman confirmed, offering an electronic signature pad. Yes, that's me. Special delivery. Requires immediate receipt. Diana signed and accepted the small box, bringing it inside. No return address was visible. The postmark showed it had been mailed from Portland 3 days ago. With trembling fingers, she opened the package. Inside was a single flash drive and a note in unfamiliar handwriting. The truth about Vance Mercer. Watch alone. Diana plugged the drive into her laptop, heart pounding. A video file began to play, surveillance footage from what appeared to be a hotel lobby. The timestamp showed a date 6 weeks before her birthday, during Vance's Portland project. The footage showed Vance entering the hotel with a woman, the curator, Elise Montgomery. They crossed the lobby with professional distance between them, but as they entered the elevator, Vance's hand moved to her lower back in a gesture of clear intimacy. Diana stared at the screen in disbelief. While she had been betraying Vance with Kent, had Vance been unfaithful as well? Had their entire marriage been built on mutual deception? The video continued with additional clips. Vance and Elise entering and exiting the hotel on different dates, always discreet but unmistakably involved. A text document opened automatically when the video ended. He's not who you thought he was. Neither is she. There's more if you want it. Reply to this number if interested. 503-555-0187. Diana closed her laptop, mind racing. If this was true, everything changed. Her guilt, Vance's moral high ground, the entire narrative of their divorce, all undermined by his own hypocrisy. But who had sent this? Kent remained the obvious suspect, but he was under constant surveillance in federal detention. Who else would benefit from reopening these wounds when she was finally preparing to move forward? Diana reached for her phone, intending to text the mysterious number, then hesitated. What would it accomplish? More pain? More recrimination? Or was it a trap? Another element of an elaborate game she didn't fully understand? After long consideration, Diana deleted the message. Whatever the truth about Vance and Elise, dragging it into the light wouldn't heal her. The past was a closed room she needed to walk away from, not furnish with new grievances. She removed the flash drive, dropped it into a glass of water, and returned to packing. Tomorrow she would leave Seattle and the person she had been there. From the ashes of her mistakes, perhaps something worthwhile could yet emerge. As she turned out the lights on her final night in the house Vance had built, Diana didn't notice the small red light blinking on the smoke detector above, a camera that had recorded her every reaction to the planted flash drive. Miles away, in a sleek downtown apartment, Vance Mercer watched the footage on his laptop, expression unreadable as he observed Diana's momentary temptation and ultimate rejection of the bait. Beside him, Elise Montgomery leaned forward. She didn't take it. Interesting. Yes, Vance agreed, his voice neutral. Interesting. Does that change anything? Vance closed the laptop. No, nothing changes. Chapter 9, 0 Degrees. 1 year later, the Westlake Cultural Center's grand opening gala transformed Seattle's rainy November evening into a celebration of light and possibility. Glass walls soared toward the sky, illuminated from within to create a beacon visible across the city. Inside, Seattle's elite mingled among interactive exhibits and installation pieces, champagne flutes catching the light from custom-designed chandeliers. At the center of it all stood Vance Mercer, accepting congratulations with measured grace. The project had cemented his status as one of the nation's premier architects, innovative yet practical, visionary yet respectful of budget constraints and environmental considerations. Truly remarkable, Vance, Theodore Blackwell enthused, clapping him on the shoulder. The board is already discussing the expansion phase. We want you for that as well, of course. I'm honored, Vance replied with a professional smile that never quite reached his eyes. But let's enjoy tonight's achievement before planning the next. As Blackwell moved on to greet other guests, Elise Montgomery appeared at Vance's side, elegant in midnight blue. Your adoring public is suitably impressed, she remarked, handing him a fresh champagne. How does it feel to be the toast of Seattle again? Like watching a performance from the wings, Vance admitted quietly. I designed the stage, but feel disconnected from the production. Elise studied him with a perceptive eye that made her such an exceptional curator. You achieved everything you set out to do this year. Professionally triumphant. Kent Sawyer disgraced and imprisoned. Diana is no longer relevant. Vance finished firmly. Then why did you ensure she received an invitation tonight? Before Vance could respond, a ripple of attention moved through the crowd near the entrance. Diana Mercer had arrived, looking striking in a simple black dress, her hair styled differently than Vance remembered, shorter, more confident. She paused in the doorway, clearly uncomfortable with the sudden attention, before squaring her shoulders and moving into the room with deliberate poise. Excuse me, Vance said to Elise, setting down his untouched champagne. Diana circulated through the exhibits, maintaining a careful distance from the center of the room where Vance held court. Though she exchanged polite greetings with those who acknowledged her, her focus remained on the architecture itself, studying design elements, occasionally making notes in a small journal. She was examining a cantilevered viewing platform when she felt a presence beside her. The structural support is hidden within the adjacent wall, Vance explained quietly, creating the illusion that it's floating. Diana turned, meeting his gaze directly for the first time in 18 months. It's beautiful. All of it. Thank you for coming, Vance said. I wasn't certain you would. I almost didn't, Diana admitted, but I wanted to see your work. You've outdone yourself. An awkward silence settled between them. Former intimates, now uncertain of the most basic social protocols. How has Ben? Vance finally asked. Diana looked surprised. You know where I moved? I keep informed about things that were once important to me. The implication that she was now relegated to the past tense hung between them. Bend is good, Diana said carefully. I'm teaching art at the community college. Simple life, but fulfilling. Vance nodded. I'm glad. Are you? Diana challenged gently. After everything that happened, everything you orchestrated, are you genuinely glad that I found some peace? Vance's expression remained neutral. What exactly do you think I orchestrated, Diana? River Point's collapse. Kent's federal indictment. The convenient timing of your rise as he fell. Diana met his gaze unflinchingly. The attack in prison. You give me too much credit, Vance replied. Kent Sawyer destroyed himself through his own greed and shortcuts. As for the prison incident, I'm an architect, not a criminal mastermind. Then why invite me here tonight? To showcase your triumph? To remind me of what I lost? Vance glanced around the crowded room. Let's continue this conversation somewhere more private. He led her to a small office behind the main exhibition space, his temporary workspace during the final phase of construction. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Seattle's twinkling skyline and the dark waters of Puget Sound beyond. I invited you, Vance said, closing the door, because I wanted closure. Diana laughed softly. Closure? After systematically dismantling everything and everyone connected to our divorce? That's not closure, Vance. That's conquest. Is that what you believe happened? I know what happened, Diana replied. I watched it unfold with clinical precision. The question is why invite me to witness the final victory lap? Haven't I paid enough for what I did? Vance turned to the window, his reflection superimposed over the city he had helped shape. This isn't about payment or punishment anymore. It's about ending a chapter definitively. By showing me the wonderful life you've created without me, Mission accomplished. You've won, Vance. Completely and totally. Vance turned back to face her. This was never a competition, Diana. Then what was it? Because from where I stand, you orchestrated the perfect revenge, prospering while ensuring everyone who hurt you suffered. Not revenge, Vance corrected. Justice. Consequences proportional to actions. Diana stepped closer. And what about your actions? The affair with Elise during your Portland project? Something flickered in Vance's expression. Surprise quickly masked. What are you talking about? I received surveillance video of you and Elise entering a hotel together. Multiple occasions. Always when you were supposedly working late. Understanding dawned in Vance's eyes. And you believed it? I didn't want to, Diana admitted. But the footage was convincing. Vance shook his head. There was no affair with Elise. She's a colleague who became a friend after our divorce. Nothing more. Those videos were manipulated or taken out of context. How convenient that you have explanations for everything, Diana said bitterly. Just like you had nothing to do with Kent's business collapse or the prison attack. The difference, Vance replied evenly, is that you chose to believe the worst about me without question. Just as you did the night you told your sister you hoped I would crash. The truth of his words struck Diana like a physical blow. You're right, she whispered. I did. Both times. Vance's expression softened slightly. For what it's worth, I never wished you harm. Even at my coldest, I only wanted accountability, not suffering. Is that why you gave me the house in the settlement? Why you didn't expose my affair publicly until Kent forced the issue? I gave you the house because I couldn't bear to live in it anymore, Vance admitted. Every corner held memories I needed to escape. Diana nodded, unexpected tears threatening. I found your journal. The plans for children's rooms. The second honeymoon ideas. Vance looked away. That was a different life. A different man. A better man than the one who spent a year executing the perfect revenge plan. Perhaps, Vance acknowledged. But that better man died in a snowstorm, listening to his wife wish for his death. The finality in his voice made Diana shiver. She reached into her purse and removed a small wrapped package. I brought you something. A belated housewarming gift for whatever home you've created now. Vance accepted it cautiously. Inside was a small crystal snowflake, exquisitely crafted to catch and refract light. To remember the coldest winter, Diana explained softly. Not as a reminder of pain, but as acknowledgement that we both survived it. Vance held the snowflake to the light, watching rainbow prisms dance across the walls. Thank you, he said simply. I should go, Diana said. I have an early flight back to Oregon tomorrow. Vance walked her to the door. Diana, he said as she stepped into the hallway. I hope you find happiness in your new life. I mean that sincerely. Diana studied his face one last time. The strong features she had once known better than her own, now arranged in an expression she couldn't fully decipher. Goodbye, Vance. As she walked away, Vance returned to the window, the crystal snowflake cool against his palm. Below, Seattle continued its rain-washed evening, oblivious to the small drama that had just concluded 32 stories above. His phone buzzed with a text from Elise. Everything okay? Vance typed back, yes. Final chapter closed. Another text appeared from his attorney, Harold Wilson. Kent Sawyer's appeal denied. Serving full 12-year sentence. Thought you want to know. Vance slipped the phone back into his pocket without replying. Outside, Diana emerged from the building, turning her face up to the gentle rain for a moment before hailing a taxi. There had been a time when Vance would have run after her, protected her from even the slightest discomfort. That man was indeed gone, replaced by someone harder, more pragmatic, someone who had learned that love was not always enough, that betrayal sometimes severed connections that could never be repaired. Vance placed the crystal snowflake on his desk, watching as the security lights illuminated Diana's taxi disappearing into the night. He felt neither triumph nor regret, neither hatred nor love, only the 0-degree clarity of a man who had walked through the coldest winter and emerged permanently changed. Goodbye, Diana, he whispered to the empty room. In the morning, he would begin designing his next project, a private residence on a cliff overlooking the Pacific, with walls of glass to welcome light from all directions and foundations deep enough to withstand any storm. A home for one. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there.